Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and I think I had a request to do the Doom Patrol, and I wanted to do, I tried to do a couple of videos on John Byrne's Doom Patrol, and I did 2 issues, but I realized I probably have to do 4, right? And one of these is one of the 4 I'm going to do. But I'm going to go do an overview of this, right? First, so initially, I think after Byrne was at Marvel and he went to DC, and when he went to DC, he did a couple of books, and he did one creator-owned book that didn't do too well, and then he wanted to do more profile things, so he said he wanted to do, they asked him to do a Justice League arc. And he said, yeah, and he said, but we need it to be 5 issues. He said, what if I have a story, that isn't going to fit those 5 issues? So, well, do it, I think he just said use splash pages. I think that's what Mike Carlin said, but he said, okay, I'll make sure the story fits that and it's not, over bloated. So he said, hey, you should take this book and you should Justice League introduce the new Doom Patrol. So he's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I'll definitely do that. And then as he was trying to plot out the story, he was like, well, if you want me to take everything that was done and kind of make sense of it, it's going to take me, 6 issues or more to get to that point. He said, and I think Mike Carlin said, well, you should Man of Steel it. So basically, start over, right? Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh no, but the Doom Patrol has been so different. And because as I think I did a video where I talked about the kids were supposed, well, no, actually, that's what I remember. I was trying to do the video and it didn't happen, right? So I'll do a search just to make sure if I did it or not, right? So this Justice League happens. They introduce the Doom Patrol. They're a little more grungy when they come out, right? And Byrne also introduced a bunch of other characters. So to give you an idea, I did a look over in this, and I thought this was going to be like, this, I don't know how to say this, right? But I thought I picked out the best of the bunch, and that was it, right? I said, I'll pick out the best of the bunch, I'll do a video, and then I'll move on. I also say that the Doom Patrol trade is scarce, right? DC isn't promoting that, but it's definitely scarce. So, but this is the cast, right? So we have, obviously, Robot Man, a new design by Byrne, a new design for the Negative Man, the actual, negative person seeing just as bones. Elastigirl, and then we have the new members, which is Nudge, Vortex, and Grunt, right? They were picked up during the Justice League, right? And they're in, was it Cortez? Their location is a prison, I think off of Florida, I think it's off of Florida, right? So, and so I looked through these before I was doing it, and they were there was one thing I was thinking that was really good, which was this Blue Steel arc, because there's, I think, Battle Alita, that is sort of similar to this, or Real Steel with Hugh Jackman, but this is more like Battle Alita type of thing, and I think Byrne could have done more with this, but there's only 2 issues. Even this one where he's dealing with these weird creatures, this is, the first arc is just an action-packed arc. So when here, I think a lot of people were taken aback because Byrne was doing kind of Tarantino storytelling. So it starts well in the action. And this, Doug Byrne is inked by Doug Hazlewood mostly through the series. And he was supposed to ink Byrne Spider-Man, but it didn't happen. But this is a good period. This is a period where there's like 3 different styles for Byrne. There's the Doom Patrol, the Blood of the Demon, and Action Comics, which has an inker that's doing it a little differently. But oh yeah, I think this is Faith from the Justice League. Faith joins the team for a little while, and also she's a telepath and also Metamorpho, right? So I showed you we have this thing underwater that they're fighting. We have the robots fighting arc in Blue Steel. We have everyone turning into gorillas. The devolution happens. I said Metamorpho, the monster morph. An origin of how we get to see what their origin is, and then Byrne brings it all to a close. And the way he leaves it, this is still the overview. Yeah, it's a long one. He leaves it so you get all the Doom Patrol back. Now that's what kind of should have happened with the originals. I think everyone came back except for Elastigirl, Rita Farr. So I didn't like the fact that she didn't come back. And basically, we're going to deal with some of their origin in this, right? So, so we'll start here. We go 11 through 14, right? So we're going to go to, it's going to deal with the new origin of the professor, right? So we see the professor, and Byrne was doing a lot of modeling and then drawing it into the book. So like some of this stuff, he would do live models and he would show it online. And he had a lot of peers on the website, I think Strata Cafe, but he did a lot of modeling, right? So we see these robots bathing the professor, and then we see the professor having a flashback. This is a good flashback, right? We see the professor. He has hair, but we see his hairline a little further back. It's closer. And we see him paralyzed for right now with this witch doctor, right? And for some reason, he got on this witch doctor's bad side, and he's starting to, your agony will be beyond measure, right? And we see the professor in pain, and they help him up. He has this sort of exoskeleton that doesn't allow him to walk, but it allows him to do some small functions, right? So the professor is in pure hell in this series, right? So as a story, the key kind of the cliffhanger stuff going on in here, Grunt they're in the city, Nudge, Grunt, and Vortex, and the police had heard about this gorilla in here, and Rita and Robot Man are going to pick them up, right? And where we left off, we saw Grunt get shot. So Byrne kind of backtracks, so you know what's going on. The police break in, they see the gorilla, think it's a mad gorilla. They hit him with some buckshot and right in the chest, but the costume seemingly saves him, but not enough to stop him from falling out the window. So we see Nudge using her powers, and Vortex also using his powers, right? So we got to get out of here. He's not thinking of Grunt. He's telling us, let's go. But she's like, nope. He thinks he's going to jump. He said, I'm not jumping. I have to concentrate. He said, it was me that pushed Grunt out of the window, right? Also, if he got shot with buckshot, so it wouldn't hurt him, right? So it shows how he survived. I thought it was a costume, but it was actually Nudge who utilized her power pretty interestingly, right? So then the police come and they make short work of them. All right. So here in the headquarters, which is an old prison, they're walking through it. And he has to stay in this sort of containment to kind of cure him. So this is, I think the editors asked if Metamorpho could stay in here. I think he was a good fit for the team. I think he should have stayed for the entire time, right? And Larry's also going through some stuff, right? So when he gets there, we see the witch doctor come out of nowhere. And he says they got unfinished business to do, right? So, with the police still after them, they try to, float through the air, but someone comes in and saves them. And Robot Man comes in there, right? But they're like, something is scared Grunt for some strange reason. There's a whole big ad in this book, right? And he attacks Robot Man. He said it looks like he got over being scared. And then Rita's finally trying to calm him down. And he sees his mother, right? So we get a little flashback of Grunt, right? So Grunt was a regular kid, and they did a test on, and they cut his brain into a gorilla. And then when they try to prod him, he's still, he's a human inside of a gorilla, right? So they try to play with him, and then he takes them out and takes their keys. And then the keys, she tries to shock him, but then, of course, we see him cut loose what he can do, not knowing his own strength, or he wanted to take her out. Right? So now this guy is going to take out all of his nastiness on the chief, but we don't know why, right? So now we're introduced that Grunt has finally found his family, right? So he found his family, and they don't know what happened to him, and she explains what happened, with these kids, and then he was kidnapped, and then they he found him in a circus, right? And then Mizone is kind of she doesn't take up most time of the book, but she is definitely the star of the book. She is definitely a lot of fun, and she's a good character, right? So they don't know the whole background of it, but those people got killed. And then he was running around and he was just scaring people, and they keep calling the police on him. And then, right? But at the same time, as Metamorpho and this girl, they figure things out. There's all these criminals still in the building, right? And Metamorpho tries to do something to this guy who can protect it, but he can work around that. But actually, the guy's a ghost, right? And he's going back to the proof, and he's going to put some paint on him, right? So here's another bit. When they started out, they didn't look exactly like the Doom Patrol we knew, but as we go along, and the glasses could have stayed, like Byrne added in the glasses, the goggles, it works perfectly, right? And the pencils of this, Byrne, less is more, is always great, right? And the inks are good too, but it's like really close, right? So she gets confronted by these, all these guys they got captured in here. But at the same time, he actually freed them, right? So now he's going to utilizing these villains and he's stopped Metamorpho, and look how we left the chief. You see the chief, his bones, nothing is held together. He is in bad shape, right? He's really in bad shape, right? So he can barely think, but he figures a way to contact the team. He sends out a mental distress signal, and he connects with Mizone, with Nudge, right? And they realize the chief's in danger, so they're running into action, and Grunt is running, but his mother's like, hey, if you really are him, I need you to stay. And he's like, stay? Like, no one is one of them, right? And this is the thing with the X-Men, where we don't ever see the person stay with the parents. Like Kitty's parents are gone. I'm gonna try to do this from here, and hopefully I don't hit into the camera, right? So they're flying back to save the chief, and we get back to the chief and how this has happened, right? It was like 20 years ago, and the chief comes to, it looks like some sort of either Brazilian or something like that, the pyramids out there. And he comes in there and helps the people and brings medicine. And he's like, and everyone's happy to see him, except for this witch doctor, right? And then he puts some poison in, and it kills one of the babies. And then they take their pain out on the chief, right? And they toss the chief into the sea. Good Lord. But then someone confessed, and the people killed him. They're like, wait a second, you killed our real doctor. So they killed him and tossed him, right? Like the worst refuge, right? So they want Michonne to stay here, and Vortex and Robot Man are going. And this is, Byrne also tries to keep the book weird, right? So Larry's going through something, right? And Larry's mind is split between the Robot Man and the Negative Man, his his avatar, and himself. So something's happened to him, and now he's split, and he doesn't need the bandages, and he he's talking to himself, right? The Negative Man, his negative form, is just him, right? So once the Negative Man goes back into his body, we see the effect that happens, that he has to figure this out. He has to put on some bandages, right? So she's getting messages. She's getting all of the information of the chief in her head. So that's how we're seeing the history, right? He fell down. He can't swim, but he was picked up. They figured out that he was going to give him almost a new spine, right? A mechanical spine and body, right? So they set him up, but at the same time, once they fix him up, everything is actually perfectly healed, but something happened to his body. He couldn't hold any pressure on him without pain, right? So he is trying to figure out that maybe he's going to put his brain into the Robot Man's body. That's what the initial use for the Robot Man was going to be. And we know what happened. It actually got used for Cliff Steele, right? So they're going in, and the witch doctor obviously freed these guys so he could stop the Doom Patrol. So they immediately get attacked. So yeah, this is and then we have a subplot, right? And the mouse is figuring out how to use the time machine to get to the food. The mouse sees the food. He knows he's going to get food later. So he hits the button, right? And it increases time, moves his mind. Well, we don't know what's happening here, but we know that it's speeding time up, right? So Metamorpho saying we're trapped, but I can make a small version of myself. How DC is that, right? And he sees the chief. He said, Metamorpho, why are you so tiny? Am I delusional? Right? So the fight's going on against these cool characters, and Larry gets in there. He's got his new bandages and goggles, and they finish up these villains, right? So slowly he helps out the professor who was all twisted, and then he starts putting out gas to finish off these guys, right? But the witch doctor is back, and he's can't be touched. He's gonna put the pain on the professor, but to our surprise, we see Mijoun, who said she thought about something, and she has a ghost that she's been sitting around with all the time. So that portion you have to read from the beginning to get this character, but he comes out of nowhere. But if you're surprised and shocked, that's supposed to be the shock. We go into the next issue and it'll be clearer. I'll show you, of course. So we're going to backtrack, right? So this is why I didn't want to just do these 2 issues. So it says Doug Hazlewood, but it's actually Terry Austin. So this is why I want to do these 2 books, right? And we're going to be going over 30 minutes. So this is, I think, the last time Byrne and Terry Austin worked together. And it's fun. It's definitely fun. I think the 2 of them just needed to work together longer, and they might be the next Byrne in Austin. But we have a Confederate soldier who's actually a ghost, and he killed the witch doctor, right? Because they're both ghosts, so he's able to kill him, right? So he comes in there and he starts dissolving. And he's almost gone at any level, right? So they need to get the chief back and get him fixed up. So the robots start working on him to get him back, and they want to figure out what's going on with this Elihu, right? I think that's how he say his name. He said he's just a soldier in the Confederate Army, right? And they realize that he's dead and cursed, right? And the professor knows who he is, that he's Private Washburn, right? And Vortex is like, where did you find this guy? Well, he kind of found me. And gives a short story, right? She was crying, and then she thought, hey, maybe this guy can help, right? He's always happy to see me because she was struggling with the thoughts in her head. She goes and she explains what's going on to Private Washburn, who's a loyal soldier, right? And she's saying not sure what they can do. And he's like, no, I'm not wasting any time. I'm just taking him out. If you're worried about him, I'm worried about him. He's upsetting you. He takes him out, right? So they get into his story, right? So he was just a soldier. at this prison. The Yanks hit him with an arrow. He tries to let them know, but he slips off when he tries to get the thing. And he's on the floor. He can't move. He just sees everything, and they put some explosives, and his body gets crushed. And they realize, hey, there's from the Southern general, they've been cursed, so they can't leave, right? So they have to give him they got to give him a proper burial. So they figured out where his body is, and he's like, nah, he's like, not right now, you know. He's not ready to leave yet because he's got the hots for Mizan, right? So they move past this, so we get back to that subplot with the mouse, right? So he's like trying to explain to him, but the chief also knows there's something up with Vortex that he's not saying, right? That he knows some things, he knows stuff about science, and he might not be from here, right? So he's saying, hey, this thing can, I'm doing time travel through the mind, but it really doesn't kind of work, you know. He's not ready to put it in the world, so he's just going to dissolve the project. But he did tests, and it was kind of working, right? So Cliff is like, hey, I'm going back in time. So I'm going to put it in my mind, and I'm going to go back in time, and I will never be in the accident. So, but the thing of it is that he looks normal, but he sees himself as Robot Man. So even though he's back in time, he still sees himself in the present, right? So we see, and so to kind of play that off, we see that he's seeing that, right? But to see himself, he has to look in the mirror. When he looks in the mirror, then he can see what everyone else sees. But when he looks at his own body, he sees Robot Man, right? But he doesn't care as long as he's human to everybody else, right? So he's walking around, his old girlfriend is there, right? And he's naked. So he's like, hey, let's go back to bed. He said, uh-oh, he said, so this is going to be weird, right? So they realize, they think Cliff is dead, but he's not. He utilized the thing, and he went back in time, right? So we have Rita decides she's going to go find him. But the difference is she doesn't know that she hasn't looked at herself. So she doesn't know the effect that's happening to her, right? So they see a little kid riding a motorcycle. They don't see an adult riding. So they're like, we got to follow her, right? So Robot Man puts some clothes on. He's like, I'm not taking a race. I'm not doing it. No chance, right? And then we see Rita. Now he sees her normal, and she says she was always a fan, right? And when he died, she kept tabs on him, right? And then she saw his body being removed, and figured out that it was going to the chief, right? So then she started working for the chief. Then she found his brain, and she still was infatuated with him. And then, of course, the chief didn't use it for himself. He used it for Robot Man, right? And he said, over all this time, I've been in love with you, right? So Byrne keeps it weird. She is one step beyond Wanda. She's totally into him, his mind, and however he is. But his girlfriend is there, and she's like, what's going on? And they realize she's a girl. He's kissing a girl. And the police have been following him. I'm pretty sure his girlfriend didn't make it sound any better, right? So they're talking to Rita, and she's telling them that she's not a kid. She wasn't trying anything, and they won't believe her. And at the same time, Robot Man is stuck in jail right when this accident is supposed to happen. And of course, that causes time to flux. So I'm sorry I went through all of this. I could have just did the other two, but I did like those two other issues. So it could have worked simpler, but this was the one that I wanted to do. This definitely is the favorite of the run, right? And now he's on some sort of island, and is this the end of the Doom Patrol? And Byrne wrote the end of the Doom Patrol. Now, many moons ago, the Doom Patrol was not selling well enough to keep going, so they decided to do a shock value, kill the Doom Patrol, and have people write in, and nobody did, right? They didn't appear. No, they appeared again in Showcase, where they came up with a new Doom Patrol. Robot Man was still alive. His brain was still alive, and was it Doc Magnus puts him, the guy who did the Metal Man, puts him back together in a Byrne-like outfit, armor, and then he's with the new Doom Patrol, the Chief's old girlfriend, a black dude, and the negative woman, right? So then later we find Cliff in the Titans, and that's what builds up interest in them finally. So then we slowly find they do a new Doom Patrol, and we find the ones that are alive. We still have, basically the Showcase one, but then we kind of find the secrets of the ones that pass, and then Grant Morrison does his, right? But Byrne is doing something different here, right? Byrne is like, I'm going to showcase what could happen, or what should happen, right? So Larry's checking on Grunt, and Grunt is doing good, and he's happy. Can't say too many words because they cut portions of his brain, but he's able to talk, and he still has, obviously, people, since we only use 10%, they cut off the portion that is, he still has a high brain function. He just can't speak. So they cut most of the areas where it's speech, right? So now they don't know where either of them are, but, they don't know if they're going to screw up the whole timeline. So, right? So Robot Man is with his team. They see him as a regular Robot Man, but we see him as how he is now, and they're all trapped, right? So they need Cliff to save them. We get through a backtrack of what's going on here, and so he tries to save, and they immobilize him, right? So now, of course, what happens when they died originally. They are tasked to either save themselves or sacrifice themselves. And they decide they're going to sacrifice themselves. Well, Cliff's like, is everyone gone stupid? He tells Rita to shrink. Of course, the villain gets a little magnanimous, and before he gets able to blow up the thing, Rita gets into action, gets rid of them, and saves the day. So Byrne actually, with this thing, fixes the Doom Patrol, and they don't die, which ultimately should be the ripple that they go to in the DC universe. But as he stops their death in this timeline, he shifted to another one. So we see, he said the negative man's back to normal. But Rita has a DP tattoo on her breast, and the Chief is crazy, right? Right, so the Chief is attacking Rita, and then we have Green Lantern come in there. And Green Lantern is trying to take them out. He's got Rita, tries to smash Robot Man, and he's transported again, right? So this time he's transported, and he runs into, he said the Teen Titans. They know we're the Justice League, right? And then we have, I think it was at Mala. But then the classic Doom Patrol comes in their green outfits, and they stop the Brain and Mala. All right? And more of the classic Silver Age characters come out of nowhere, right? We got Batman, Batwoman, and Robot Man figures that this is not the real Batman, right? That's not the original, and they need to go check Cliff out because he's talking crazy. But when I saw these pages, I was like, I think Byrne should have went green. I think the green really says Doom Patrol. I think the new outfit's okay, but just the green outfits is just really cool. Only thing you get Cliff in the green outfit, right? So we get to see him. He gets to see that he's in a classic Doom Patrol, right? So they go to the Batcave, and now they're saying we also got to find Rita. She's kind of gone, right? So while this is happening to Robot Man, she has just been bounced through all these timelines. And of course, Superman is the one to figure out where she is, right? And Rita is next to Rita, right? So now there's like timelines are going to get really screwed up if we don't figure this out, right? And then the original Batman shows up and Robot Man figures it out too because of how their voices. But I think the Dick Grayson Batman is using a voice thing so he sounds like Batman, and Robot Man was able to figure that out, right? So they see, matching their brain patterns, they're trying to match it through the timelines with the Chief's help, right? They're utilizing his thing so they can talk to the Chief in our timeline. But then he says, hey, could this affect our timeline? And he's like, yeah, but we'd all become imaginary. Now, this is an in-joke because I think Hyper Time put Byrne's generation into the DC universe as one of the Earths. So this is a Byrne's contingency plan to wipe it out of the DC universe. So it would be imaginary. It's an imaginary story, not another Earth, right? Or another timeline, right? So Cliff, of course, has to do the worst thing ever, go through another explosion, and he gets woken up, and he said, but I got to talk to Rita, right? So he talks to Rita, and she's still in love with him, right? And she's just happy to be with him. So, right? And that's the end, right? So those two are my favorites, but in looking through it, it's definitely a fun series. Cut short, but at the same time, the 18 issues, if you can find a trade, most of the time the trades cost $120. Some of them cost more, but you also get the couple of Doom Patrol stories Byrne did with Paul Kupperberg. So you get Secret Origins. I believe you get Superman 18 and the Doom Patrol crossover. So you get and possibly some Who's Who art. So that's a good thing to have if you have that trade. But I'm pretty sure these issues are easy to find, and it's definitely a fun series. Definitely a lot of sci-fi stuff in here. And Byrne doesn't go full wacky weird, but he does have some weird stuff. And the breakout star is Mi-Jong Kwan. She is the character that she kind of steals the show. She doesn't take up, well, no, there's a bunch of plot lines involving her, but she's definitely one of the more fun characters. I think Keith Giffen killed her in the next series of the Doom Patrol. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's to have a creator just torch another thing. I mean, they say Byrne is privy to doing that, but, I'm not sure why DC would have let that happen, just have them forget them. But, it is what it is. Spinner Rack is out.